Roll call. So, Board Chair McNeil.
Here.
Vice Chair Dombrowski.
Here, good evening.
Board Member Zorns.
Here.
Board Member Perry.
Here.
Board Member Arndt.
Here.
Board Member Shrevenick. And Board Member Mead. We have a quorum of 5.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have public comment. Is there anybody for public comment? Going once. Twice. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Looks like we have minutes, vouchers. Any questions or comments on the consent? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
A motion by Councilmember Perry and a second by Board Member Zorns, excuse me. All right, all those in favor by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. And any abstentions? It carries unanimous. Looks like we have some action items tonight. First one up is resolution of open fund with King County for grant deposits.
Sorry, that it got switched around. It's a switcheroo. Sorry about that.
I got a few things.
Yeah, we
between
had to
whenever the packet went.
Sorry.
No problem. So we're 5 days up first to tax reimbursement for North Shore Senior Center.
So I mentioned in our last meeting that we were doing some background work on trying to clean up some easements that we had on the property with the city of Bothell. And so we identified a tax parcel that has the lift station that city of Bothell maintains and runs. And we found that this North Shore Senior Center was actually paying taxes on that yearly, but they have not been utilizing that space at all. So we thought it'd be that would be right to just reimburse from 2014 to 2023 the taxes that the senior center had paid, as the NPRSA should have been it should have been our expense. So that amount is $3,047.21. So we're asking to just reimburse the senior center for that amount.
Okay, is there any discussion? Comments from anybody? I would entertain a motion.
To
I just, can I, a point of order question? Was this in our packet?
No. This was added after the agenda packet went out.
Thank you.
So does the board need time to have an open discussion, further discussion on the matter, to hear some more comments? Okay.
I don't. It seems pretty straightforward.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion.
So moved. Councilmember File.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Is there any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor by aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. And any abstentions? Carries unanimous. 5B, professional services contracts for Woodridge Construction and CDK Construction for job order contracting services.
just some background information on this. So we put out an RFQ for a second round of advertisement for our job order contracting. We did an initial round last year at this time, but we only had one contractor respond to our advertisement, which is Forma Construction. We still have a contract with Forma Construction, but With the projects that we want to complete next year, we want to have some flexibility in contractors. So we went out to advertise for additional contractors to work under our current dock contract. And we had 2 other contractors respond, and we want to move forward with awarding them with contracts. So it's a 2-year term, 1 bilateral option for term of 1 year for renewal. And it's mutually agreed upon renewal with the contract date starting December 1st. I believe you guys had the contracts in your agenda packet. It's the same contract that we extended to Forma last year. And there are no changes. It's exactly the same.
And just one other thing, whenever we initially went out and received the response from Forma, we did so with the intention of making 3 awards, but we only received the 1 response. So this isn't like we received a response and now all of a sudden we're going out and finding more contractors, and that wasn't the original plan. It had always been staff's intention to have multiple contractors available to perform work if one was busy or didn't have the capacity to take on a project. We just didn't have the responses. So this is really just sort of finishing up that initial the initial intent of that solicitation, even though technically, as Christine mentioned, this was a second RFQ.
Any questions that anybody has?
No further questions. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
First and second, any discussion? All right, all those in favor by saying aye.
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 Any noes? And any abstentions? There is unanimous.
Okay, so our next item is the capital repairs plan. So we talked through this with you all last, we proposed this last meeting. And so our proposed capital repairs plan for 2024 is to do the North Shore Senior Center building upgrade, which would include envelope repair and painting. And then we have the Health and Wellness Center building upgrade, which will include envelope refinishing. So just prep spot treating, spot repairs, and then painting. And then we want to finish out the exterior projects with the handrail replacement that we had planned to do last year, but we moved to 2024. So we're looking at just those 3 projects next year. Does anybody have any questions or I guess any conversation around those or anything that you all would like to see happen in addition to those?
Sorry, I'll go back to that stuff.
I think with our budget that we have, with what we have in reserves now, we're not quite finished with the 2 projects that we have going. So I think planning for at least these 3 currently, and then reassessing, like if we have funds left over from these projects that we're doing now in the next year. I think maybe we could probably add a small project, but I think that having reserve 2025 is really going to be helpful. So I think these 3, especially going into possibly a new levy, having the exterior buildings fresh and, having a little bit of landscaping done and having that bridge really finished out is going to leave a really big impact for the voters.
Any further discussion? So we're looking for a motion to approve. This is correct?
Correct.
The 2024 project.
Yep.
I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. And any abstentions? Very unanimous.
Hey, we are moving right along. This is great. Okay, so next is going to be the big one, which is our levy rate and our budget. So there's going to be two resolutions that we'll ask you to approve at the end of this, but there's some background. First of all, each year we have to set the levy rate in King and Snohomish County by resolution. That doesn't just automatically happen. Under Washington state law, each year we can choose to increase the levy rate by up to 1% to match inflation. This will yield around $15,000 in additional tax revenue. And it's not a significant added burden to the voters for a property assessed at 600,000, which is the median value in the district. This would be an extra 3 cents a year. So very, very little impact to voters, but cumulatively it adds up and it will help us to do everything that's on our capital repairs plan. For history, the board has approved a full 1% increase each year so far, including 1 year when that was slightly above the rate of inflation. This year it's significantly below, as I'm sure we all know. So looking at the budget, we right now anticipate to end out 2023 with around $750,000 in our general fund and still a full $1 million line of credit in the King County interfund loan. We don't expect to touch that interfund loan at all next year. We're looking at around $1.5 million each of revenues and expenditures and an ending balance of, again, right around $750,000, slightly above our beginning balance. If you want to look at those numbers in more detail, this slide shows our expected general fund revenues. Things to call your attention to here really is just the 1.5 million in tax money. There's a couple other incidental revenues. There's our $16,000 ILA contributions, and we're expecting about $10,000 of interest. But most of that money is going to come from our taxes, as we know. In terms of expenses, pretty much everything looks the same as it did the last year, except for the line items for capital repair. So for that, you can see we're looking at $1.25 million for the 3 projects. That's broken down, as Christine mentioned in our last item, to $250,000 each for the envelope refinishing and the handrail replacement, and then $750,000 for the envelope repair. The bond fund, which is sort of a holdover from the bonds that we use to construct the Health and Wellness Center, we're expecting to have closed by the end of the year. So as you can see, there's no revenues or expenditures out of that fund coming next year. We expect that to be all transferred into our general fund and closed by the end of Q4. And then the interfund loan, again, we do not anticipate there being any revenues or expenditures out of that fund. It was strictly there as a cushion to get us through Q3 of this year, which we managed to do without withdrawing any money from it. So we just let it sit there until the end of 2024 and it goes back to the county. So at this point, we need to open a public hearing to receive any comments on the levy rate and budget, any discussion, and then we'll need a motion to pass those 2 resolutions.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and open the public meeting. And is there any public that wishes to comment?
This is for the 2024 budget.
Yes.
It's the packet says
Packet says 2023.
Oops,
and
my mistake.
the date on it says 2022. For the date today.
This is what happens when you copy and paste from last year. The numbers in the actual budget spreadsheet are correct, even if the date, the agenda packet is wrong, for which again, I apologize, my mistake.
So we'll be able to correct that
Yes, the resolution refers to the correct numbers, and the final budget will reflect the correct calendar year. Yes.
And the levy rate is also 2024. Yes. Thank you. Just
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, so we're gonna close public comments. And then we're moving into now we're taking a motion. Is that correct, Barbara?
Yes, please.
So I will entertain a motion, I believe with those corrections.
So moved, Councilmember File.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And any abstentions? Here's unanimous. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Hey, James, I just want to make sure we approve both of those resolutions, including the 1%.
The motion as written on the slide was to approve both resolutions.
Okay, that just, the motion didn't make that clear. And since there's two, for our record, I just thought we should make that clear on the record.
that's a good point. I was wondering the same thing.
So they both listed there. Is that correct, Robert?
Yes, they are both listed there.
Thanks, James.
Okay, so our next item is resolution R2302, opening a fund for King County for grant deposits. So we received a $350 check for grant money from King County. But we need to put that grant money somewhere that is not in the NPRSA general fund. We had a construction fund that was open that we intended to use for that grant money, but because of the inactivity in the account, the county closed it. So now we need to just do some administrative work to open the fund. And King County is asking for a resolution to do so. So we really want to keep the grant monies for the Youth Center for Excellence separate from the levy funds that we're receiving from the current levy that we have. And I think I said all this. Yeah, we're good.
It's really straightforward. This is a purely administrative item.
And just for clarification purposes, it's $350,000.
Yes.
$350,000.
350,000. I'm sorry. Thankfully.
Okay, is there any discussion on that?
I'm glad that you made that clarification because I thought, man, $350, that's a lot less than what I thought we were getting. So thank you for that clarification. Are you at the point where you want somebody to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay. I move to pass resolution R2302 to create a grant fund.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. And any abstentions? Okay, carries unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, so we're moving on. I believe this is our last action item. And this is the Youth Community Center RFQ. So just a little background. I know we have some new board members that just came on this year. So I think that it would be good to kind of go over some background information. So in October 2022, our board approved staff to enter into contract with King County to accept $750,000 in grant funds for the youth center feasibility study and needs assessment. In February of 2023, the board discussed and approved staff to move forward with the RFQ feasibility study with the intention of partnering with the Youth Center for Excellence. And they would take, after a selection was made, they would take over a selection for a consultant was made. The Youth Center for Excellence would really take over the the needs assessment process. And so on September 7th of this year, staff advertised for a RFQ. And then on the 27th of September, we received the King County, the funds, $350,000 from King County. And then on October 10th, staff and partners interviewed the finalists. So there have been some discussion and concerns voiced around this RFQ. So I just wanted to open up some discussion here today to talk about where we're at and how we're going to move forward. So some concerns that were voiced are the Youth Center for Excellence. I got confirmation from Bill Hogan that their 501c3 status has been delayed. And if they probably will not have this designation for at least 7 months or more, is what Mr. Hogan was reported to me. And so right now we have the RFQ. We have 2 consultants that have participated in our advertisement, but we have not made an award at this time. And so I talked to our legal counsel and they advised us that we shouldn't wait any longer because we're out of that advertisement timeframe that we said that we were going to make an award. We said we had made an award like 2 weeks ago, and we haven't done anything yet. And so I wanted to talk to the board because right now we're at a position where we're relying on the Youth Center for Excellence to take over this RFP process for the needs assessment and the feasibility study. But I don't know if we can really do that if they're not actually a formed organization, right? And so I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if this is an NPRSA project, if NPRSA staff is going to move forward with this feasibility study. That's a big pull, especially during construction season for me and Barbara to work with these consultants and try to get the best information and data out for our study. And so I just don't know where we're at. And so I guess we need your guidance on if we're going to move forward with the award, we need to do so right away. And secondly, if we're not, then we need to reject all and maybe bring this back up in January where we can talk through, who's the logistics of the whole needs assessment. And I guess we need to really talk about the Youth Center for Excellence and their involvement in the project. I guess those are those 3 buckets that we need to kind of talk about.
So what are the requirements? So it wasn't here for the original grant process. What are the requirements from the county in terms of the funding? Does it expire? Is it going to evaporate if it's not used? What are the restrictions?
All right, I tried to get some more information on that, but I wasn't able to reach anybody. So those are things that I'm still trying to figure out if that money is like gone 2024 or what that looks like. But I haven't got any answers.
I don't believe timing of the grant is really an issue. I can remember from the original contract that NPRSA signed with King County. I think where we need a little bit more clarity is exactly how the management of the needs assessment would go and how much we can hand off to a community partner that's still forming. But we will definitely find out if timing's an issue. But from what I remember from working with staff, and there was a lot of work and details that had to be worked out to even enter into the contract. And so, but I don't think timing's an issue, but we can definitely find out.
Karina had her hand raised first.
Thank you. You know, it seems to be, should we approve the item, there would definitely need to be a separate fund set up and set aside just for this grant allocation monies. We wouldn't want to have any confusion of funds or any mixture of funds. And there would need to be a clear statement of what happens next once the Youth Center of Excellence is formed for the management of that grant, but there'd be a need for a segue. So it seems to be that there needs to be not just an ILA or a memorandum, but definitely a clear separate allocation budget line and fund account. I want to make sure to protect both the Parks and NPRSA and the goodness of this work, the great need and service this project would devote to the community. I'd hate to see it be lost because there isn't a separate fund or there isn't a plan for bridging how the funds are spent or the oversight of that once the Youth Center of Excellence does form and where that segue happens. But are you saying also that you may require a 0.5 staff member time, or you may require additional staff time to manage this lift? I want to be clear on your ask.
I don't think we know. I don't want to speak on top of you, but I don't think we know exactly how much staff time will need to be devoted to this. But what we're learning is that we know a lot more about this process than we did when we started it in the very beginning. So, I mean, we knew that there would be a significant amount of work with the execution of the grant. I mean, we knew that, but I don't think we really knew like exactly how much time it would take. And also just the challenges of working with a community partner on a project like this. It's a little bit difficult to know who has the complete authority and who makes the decisions. And there's just a lot of things that have to be worked out still. But I do think it will take a significant amount of time. We wouldn't hire more NPRSA staff, obviously, but we just want to make sure the board is aware that it will take NPRSA staff time away from projects that are already funded by the levy, things that might come up as we work with the senior center. And I think just at the original conversation, we expected or believed it would be a lot easier for the community partner to take on much of the work. But when we think about our responsibility as wise stewards of public taxpayer dollars, which this grant money is, we just really want to make sure we step through that carefully and handle everything the appropriate way. So, I mean, we're making a lot of progress, but it is complicated.
Absolutely. And that's why I think a separate fund and line item is really important for tracking of, every dollar, right? And it has been my experience in working with King County that they are really good stewards to working with partners and stakeholders when breaking away on new advancements. So I wonder if there might be some flexibility with King County that they may be able to help carry a little bit of this lift through the segue.
Is that it, Karina? did you need somebody to
Yeah.
answer that?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
I'm not sure who was from Dabowski or Member Dabowski or Board Member Perry. I'm not sure which one was first.
I believe Board Member Dabowski was first.
Board Member Dabowski?
Hi, okay, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, just first, I just want to start by thanking the Bothell City staff for running the RFQ process and for the folks, the 4 folks that served on the committee that reviewed the proposals and for the recommendation. I looked through the proposals. They looked very strong and it was impressive. I think there's a great opportunity. I want to give just, if I can, briefly a little background here, and this is my perspective only, and maybe some other folks have different perspectives, but in securing these dollars in the county budget, there's been a couple of different spots where I've done it. One was in the parks levy. And those dollars, we've had to actually modify the budget language to make them available. And then the second was in a special, in our general budget, our biennial budget for some bonded projects. So it has to be capital related. So there were 2 different deals. And then the second allocation is actually what we've been able to kind of break free first. But in all of that work, it has been important to, I think, my colleagues and to the county in general, that the dollars were going to a fellow government, the North Shore Park and Rec Service area, that was run by elected folks with accountability to the public. That's been key. And this kind of project, so that's point 1. Point 2, this kind of project is within the statutory authority of the NPRSA. Today, we only run a senior center, but the statutory authority authorizing park and recreation service areas is much broader and allows for this kind of work. I think that, and James can speak more to this, but the Youth Center for Excellence folks kind of came out of a suggestion and a dialogue that James and I had, that we broaden the community stakeholder or interested party process to bring folks in to kind of start giving input and championing this project. But I will say to my colleagues here and staff, it was at least never my vision that we would be writing, at least in the early stages, a big public dollar check to that group. I mean, I didn't honestly even know that they would be forming a 501c3 to make it an entity. We had a great meeting at the senior center one day. Nathan was there and others and James really was terrific in facilitating, bringing folks in from the community and the professional architects and others to say kind of what we could do. But all that is to say, maybe I'm on point 3 now, that I think it would be in the best interest of ourselves and the project to proceed with this feasibility work. We've gone out there as the NPRSA, we've asked folks to submit proposals, they've been reviewed, the dollars are available to do that. I think frankly, we should find some additional capacity, maybe on a consultant basis, to help the NPRSA on our side of the ledger manage this. Because I hear the Bothell City staff saying, you all are busy with the senior center. And, and that is true. And that's job 1. That's why we have you on board. That's really job 1. And I don't think it's fair for taxpayers honestly paying their taxes to support the senior center, which is really our only source of revenue to pay Bothell, to be paying you for this project. Karina, Councilmember File, I think has a good point that these is kind of a separate initiative and should be funded separately. I believe some of these dollars that we have could be used to give us some staff support separately for this. But that is kind of my kind of framing of this, if that's helpful, a little bit of history. But I think the themes that were hit upon there in the last presentation by staff about transparency and accountability are super important here, or important to the county, or important to me. And I think the NPRSA is the right entity, as lean and nimble as we are, to kind of at least hold on to this project for the first kind of step. And I do think we should take that first step. The dollars are there. We've talked about this a long time. It's been a lot of work to get the money. A lot of work now has been done to kind of be able to deliver us some really important information and engage in a community process and a visioning process and a feasibility assessment. And I think we should do that and kind of advance this. And as we do that, I think we've got to also bring some capacity on to figure out how to staff it from our side. So sorry for the long soliloquy there, but that's some background and kind of perspective. And if I can be real blunt, I would not be supportive of writing a check of hundreds of thousands of dollars for feasibility to the Center for Youth Excellence to run this. That was never the vision, and I'm not sure they're ready to do it. And I don't think that's the right way to go with respect to transparency and accountability. Not saying anything bad about them. I think they're great, and I think it's going to be very wonderful to work with them. So don't read more into that I'm saying. They're just a wonderful group of folks. I just think there's a lot of potential there. But at this stage, with these dollars, I think it's important that a public entity take the first step. There you go.
Councilmember Dembowski, I have like 5 questions for you.
All right.
So was your intention and Councilmember McNeil's intention, Deputy Mayor, that like Redmond, it would be a community center, senior center, like you're changing the mission to be multi-generational? Was that like your thinking originally in doing this? Because these are very separate things. Okay, if that wasn't your thinking, the Youth Center for Excellence delayed in obtaining their 501c3. We shouldn't be giving any money to anyone who does not have a 501c3 yet. Right. I mean, that's a public funding thing. So I'm confused. I'm questioning that. I totally agree. I thought we just voted to create the fund. So I'm a little confused about the continued conversation about the fund unless we're creating the fund. But I'm a big supporter of creating separate funds, making sure we can show the dollars and so on and so forth. Because, man, that's just a thing that would undo a whole lot of things. And that's not a good idea in any way to commingle it. But now I'm confused because if we're creating this fund that is not in alignment with our mission, rather than us being the umbrella organization, in which we couldn't be because our mission is different than their mission, but finding another organization to be the umbrella organization for them where they have a shared mission and they pay a 10% fee for financial overview, that the umbrella of that, then that we could give them the fund because it's a shared mission for the Youth Center for Excellence to administer while they are obtaining their 501c3. And then there would be certain parameters around that. I'm a little confused about how we would administer something that is outside of our mission and be doing all of these things to spend something that has nothing to do with our mission. So I'm a little confused about that space.
All right. Can I give you an answer on that?
Yeah.
All right. So I hear what you're saying, Councilmember Perry. And I went kind of fast there. But the NPRSA is set up under a statutory structure under the RCWs. It's a park and recreation service area, which is a type of special purpose government.
Okay.
One of the things it can do as a park and recreation service area is own a senior center. And we do that. And that was 25 years ago or so. I may be wrong on that. That was the original purpose for establishing the park and rec service area by the voters and issuing the bonds, which was to build the senior center.
Okay.
In addition, though, the statutory authority would also allow us to build ball fields, build a youth facility. It's broader than just a senior center. So that was why this money came here and why we've been working through this entity. In other words,
I'm with you. I'm with you. So if that's the case, why is this youth center getting another 501c3?
Well, I don't know. Well, let me try and answer that again. But to answer just one more kind of layer to that in answering your question or your inquiry, the vision wasn't to merge a youth facility into the senior center.
Okay.
Kind of like you were talking about in Redmond, where it's like multi-generational.
Right.
That was never. that wasn't the vision. I'm not saying that couldn't happen because that could be kind of interesting. Maybe we'll discuss that in the feasibility process.
Yeah.
But I think the vision always was a separate facility at a separate site. And we use the NPRSA because of its authority under the statute, which allows for this kind of work to occur. Number one. Number two, it's public. Number three, it's broad in terms of covering the North Shore School District, which is kind of where the need is. It's not just Bothell, but also Woodinville and also Kenmore. And the Youth Center for Excellence, and James can speak more to this, that has been a later addition of kind of the community partners who I suggested to James. I said, we need some champions in the community. We need to broaden this. So like what we did, we went and toured the Boys and Girls Clubs over in Bellevue a couple years ago. Or you talk to folks that organize WISE. There's often community champions, right, that make those projects happen. And that James went out and recruited some folks to say, hey, let's spread the good word here. Let's build some broad support in the community for this. I had envisioned kind of an advisory board. They are kind of taking the next step to maybe more formalize their structure. But I think their role in this is up to us in discussions with them.
Okay, that is so helpful.
Sorry, I went really fast.
No, I'm sorry. And I'm always playing catch up in so many things.
This is kind of evolving, it's
and I would strongly encourage us to seek legal advice from those that work in this kind of space and that can help us with the organizational structure. Because what I can see, if this is in RCW, I can see layers upon layers here that could get very confusing. And if the point is that, there's a park and rec opportunity here, and we're doing the senior, we could do youth, we could do other things, then it seems like there would be a larger, the oversight here of all those different things. And we would hire some people to support the additional space with a scope of work connected to it. So it's going to be so much more work to administer in any way or build that relationship. There should be a scope of work connected to what that looks like. So it's clear where we hit the mark and missed the mark in terms of expectation of staff support and so on. But I think we need some clarity around what the impact of a 501c3 relationship is versus what the impact of that governing board and advisory boards would be. Yeah,
you're right on. And just to be really clear, right now, this government, the NPRSA, has no obligation to the center, the Youth Center for Excellence 501c3. They are, as I understand it, a nonprofit in formation, is what we would say in the law, who is interested in being supportive of the project. At one point, this board established a subcommittee to work on this project. So we've done some internal organization around it. Me, James, and I can't remember who else is on it, but they're
Councilman Joe Marshall.
Yeah.
Council member Joe Marshall from Kenmore was on that.
Right. Because he has a strong interest in swimming pools, and we thought, the facility might have a pool. So yeah, we've done some work here, and that's not necessarily this isn't a comprehensive bullet list of the history here, but to just bring it home again, I think that this organization, under its existing authority and the work we've been doing here now for, a couple of years, should retain control of this authority. I hear the staff saying at Bothell, hey, we got our hands full, and I think we should take some steps to bring on some additional staffing capacity through the NPRSA to handle this project. So I see a nod.
Yeah, but I do think having legal, been in that world of fundraising and 501c3s for 30 years, I do think having legal legal advice, legal recommendation on the structure of it is really important for those who specialize in that space. I just think it's super important that we lend on those who have that expertise in that field of law before deciding. So we know the implications one way or the other.
I have just a couple of comments. I really appreciate Councilmember Perry, some of the things that you articulated. I want to be really clear. I hope I didn't over exaggerate our staffing issues. So I'm not trying to say that we don't have staff capacity to do this work and to do it well, but what I want the board to be aware of is the impacts that that could have to other work. And then I really want to clarify from staff's perspective, it makes a difference for us if we carry out this scope of work. It makes a difference if we are getting our direction and our vision and our guidance from the NPRSA board, or if we are getting that vision and direction and guidance from the Youth Center for Excellence board. And I think that's what we're trying to get the most clarity on. Because as we learn more about this project and we went through the consultant selection process, I am seeing that there may be times that there is a difference in vision or direction. And so for staff, for NPRSA staff, we need real clarity exactly who we're working for if we're going to carry out this scope of work. And it's not something that can't be overcome. And I think with any community group or any community advisory group, we work really closely with them. They inform our work, but our direction and guidance and vision has to come from the NPRSA board. Did I get any of that wrong? So as long as
you have, I mean, there's that standard of you cannot have the responsibility without the authority. And if in the biblical frame, if you're serving two masters in that space, it gets very, very confusing very quickly. And I think it's dangerous. I think it's it's one of those things that a legal advice would help us decipher very well. I think there's some things that we are maybe not paying attention to because we don't know, we haven't even considered it. But I want to just commend you for recognizing your scope of work and for recognizing if new and different things are coming on, that is a different scope of work. And it's important to recognize that additional work, whether you can be fantastic at it or not, your plate, I imagine, is not empty. And so, you know, being able to give us the scope of work to say, this is the scope of work that would be the additional work on our plate, and this is what we need to fund for and support. And even if we have additional staff, this is the additional scope of work it would take to add that in. That's very helpful.
Okay, so I had Nathan and then board member.
I can defer until, I'll wait.
Board member Powell.
Thank you. I really appreciate the discussion that's been had. This kind of rolls us back into prior and past discussions about the need for a separate legal advisement or legal representation, being that the NPRSA borrows its legal from the city of Bothell. That additionally creates additional blurred lines, especially with a new role with another organization. So I can really value seeking additional legal advice. I'm possibly even taking on a separate legal, having an attorney just for the NPRSA would be great. That has nice clean lines, separate from all the other work with partner organizations. And I believe it would be good for the improvement of the work underway and the safety and the scope of the work. I do apologize. I did not realize that the Youth Center for Excellence has not yet set up a line for representation of government board seats in place, but I understand they're still under formation. Hopefully in the coming months, they will do that. I think that could help aid the work. But I believe Councilmember, King County Councilmember Sarah Perry has made some really good recommendations here tonight, as well as our King County Councilmember Rob Dombowski. But I would hate to put this off. It does sound like that we can have some support from King County. and getting this underway, especially if there is a separate fund set up so that it can be accountable to those funds and reporting with government oversight and for public transparency. I feel safe moving forward.
I'll weigh in. I think there's my role here is a little convoluted because I've been working, I'm representing the senior center, but also I've been working with Youth Center for Excellence Board also as they're kind of planning too. I also just want to commend the staff on this RFQ because I think they tailored the RFQ to be pretty discreet. It's a needs assessment for what the community needs and what might be feasible for building within the North Shore area. That's one of the reasons from the senior center perspective, we're really interested too, like what other amenities out in the community kind of make sense and how do we fit together. And so the other thing I think this RFQ really did is it actually bringing on more capacity, right? Because it's bringing on consultants who can kind of help with this work and kind of build capacity to staff up, like what could the plan look like going forward? And to my mind, the RFQ is written and the way the respondents responded to it, it is pretty much looking at what the NPRSA would like to know about the region and its needs. And the work that's going on separately with the Youth Center for Excellence Board, I've been pushing their team to think, if there's needs assessments going on in the community, we need to be thinking about what are the potential fundraising implications that go along with it. So they're really separate tracks. And Councilmember Perry, to your point, I mean, there are two tracks that we're keeping kind of legally separate. There's the community group that's kind of thinking about what fundraising might be down the road, but the needs assessment doesn't get into that. The needs assessment is really kind of looking about what the needs are and what the feasibility is in the community. So that's why the 501c3 process is going forward. So that group's prepared to take on a fundraising campaign if it needs to, that's separate from the government funding. But it's not like they're trying to jump in and control things from here on. James, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I'm glad you made that.
Yeah. The Youth Center for Excellence Board is prepared to kind of step up because a lot of this is stakeholder identification and interviewing, and the Youth Center Board is prepared to assist with that and kind of do those connectings with the contractor. But it's still the NPRSA's project to kind of figure out what the needs are. So having worn several different mini hats and outfits on this project, I just thought I'd weigh in with kind of what I've seen so far.
Thank you. Board Member Perry, did you have another comment?
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you. So given that I still vote for the lawyer to come in and help us with the differentiation of the two, simply because I could see something like this based on what Councilmember Dombowski described. I could see something like this happening on many levels, for many different opportunities, youth, senior, sport, like all kinds of different things. And the question then comes up in terms of fundraising. If you're doing fundraising, are you doing zero net expense, membership fees, things like that? If you're doing fundraising as a separate 501c3 for this branch of it versus the senior center branch of it, what are the implications? And if NPRSA is holding the whole thing, we would hold the money and we would award the contracts to the consultants and one thing and another. Is there an anticipation that NPRSA would award funding to a 501c3 that's doing its separate fundraising, even though NPRSA is making the decisions about all the things? It feels kludgy, like a little opaque in that way, in terms of who would ultimately have responsibility for the dollars and who would ultimately have responsibility for the direction. And then in the way you describe it, the way I'm hearing it from my fundraising hat is that NPRSA would be a funder to the 501c3 who would carry out the extension of what NPRSA wants, or our missions would be aligned somewhat. But I do think there's a world in which those missions could and probably should be different. And so I don't understand the money trail
If I may, right now, this needs assessment, those funds sit, this funding proposal is just to do the needs assessment, the RFQ. And so it's not about construction. It's not about any part of the project. It's actually kind of it's to look at what the scope of a project could be and what might make sense. This needs assessment might come back and say, you don't need a 501c3, or it might be, this project needs to be wholly privately funded. So this RFQ is kind of meant to address some of those questions of what might be needed down the road. So it's not funding over into a project. NPRSA at this point is not, I would have some reservations as the senior center. If the NPRSA is trying to fund other projects, I'd want to be really comfortable with that. And so the NPRSA's role right now is limited to this kind of needs assessment that's going forward, or that may go forward. So that's how I kind of have it reconciled in my head. I hope that's helpful.
Very helpful. Any other comments before I go?
Just,
Yes.
I'm just sitting here. I'm new to the table. I'm listening. I'm still kind of confused on the roles. And so I feel like if I'm sitting here hearing the whole history and still kind of confused about where the authority lies, then we need to spend some more time really locking it down as we move forward. Because I think there's a lot of potential pitfalls in having confusion over who has the authority in this. And I see that the NPRSA is running this needs assessment. And so I would question what role the Youth Center for Excellence actually has in that needs assessment. Not saying that they don't have a role later on, but is that something that we need the Youth Center for Excellence as a major stakeholder in versus just one of our community partners that we get outreach for? So I would personally lean towards creating some documentation, getting some legal advice about really what is the role of the NPRSA, who has the authority, just for the purpose of the needs assessment. And then I feel like we could move forward very quickly with the process. Just not trying to cut anyone out, but simply have it very clear so that there's no confusion, at least with the needs assessment piece.
Thank you. Any other comments before I go?
James, I'll jump in, but I think it's important you jump in. I'm a little frustrated. The Center for Youth Excellence formation, 501c3 information, I feel tonight is unnecessarily gumming up this project. They are nothing more, and I don't mean that dismissively, they're nothing more than kind of a strongly interested party like that would be in any government project. I could have written the budget to grant money to a nonprofit like the Center for Youth Excellence, but we wrote the budget language to give money to us, the NPRSA. And so as to the authority, we are the sole and exclusive authority and the sole and exclusive deciders on spending this dollars. The nonprofit information, or they are kind of mere allies, if you will, important allies. I think they can be super helpful. And I think Nathan described it appropriately, but there's no concern whatsoever from my perspective on any mixed lines of authority. Bothell staff, you work for us. You're administering this work for us. And only us, the NPRSA. That's right. The NPRSA, Bothell staff wearing your NPRSA staff hats. Yeah. And I think I'm cognizant of the length of time it's taken to get here. I'm worried about the loss of momentum. I think I'm worried about what the staff has said with respect to the legal advice that we're kind of getting out of our time frame to make an award, given what was published. So I would hope, and I want James to talk, of course, because he's the visionary behind this, but that we could move forward to extent action as necessary by this board to proceed with this work and have the exploration work done.
Thank you, board member. This is a tough conversation for me. And the reason it's a tough conversation for me is because it has become convoluted. There are two entities here, which work on behalf of our community. One is the NPRSA that happens to be for the senior center right now, and the other is the Youth Center for Excellence. And what I'm finding is by talking about the two entities, when it comes to the visioning process, the needs assessment process, to me, it feels a little bit like we're saying that the Youth Center for Excellence is supposedly somehow driving the needs assessment. And I want to make it very clear tonight that they are not driving the needs assessment. The needs assessment was something Councilmember Nabowski and I have worked on for years to get this funding to help start this process. The Youth Center for Excellence is a separate entity that's forming to help bring this project across the finish line. Because we can all sit here and talk about how much the county is going to put in, but at the end of the day, we all know it's going to take private funding. And that is what this group is set up to do, is to raise the funds to build the project. They're not here to get in between the NPRSA, merge funds and all that. They would like to have a voice at the table, because the most important thing about this entire visioning process and the needs assessment is the youth. That's the piece that I'm not hearing right now. Councilman Nabowski and I, I'm looking at you on the screen right now. When I started talking to you 6.5 years ago, it was about the youth. You've heard my story, and my story will continue. And if we lose the fact that this is about youth, yes, we want to hear from the community, but are we hearing about the community for a community center, or are we hearing about a community needs for the youth within our community? And that is my vision. That was my vision from day one, and that's what I've been fighting for. And if it's going to morph and change into a community, fine. But the Youth Center for Excellence mission is about youth. It's about providing services for youth. And so I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of what it is that the original vision was. And if it changes, and holistically this group, NPRSA, Youth Center for Excellence, decide to change, that's fine. But my vision, what I'm trying to create, what I've started to create, has always been for youth. And so I just wanted to make sure I get that out right now, that I feel at an impasse right now when I see the Youth Center for Excellence has a delayed obtaining their 501c3 status. They haven't obtained it yet. But the same thing applied when we started One Bothell. We had not obtained our 501c3, but yet we were able to partner with the county and do the work that the county and the city and the community want. And so that statement up there, to me, hurts me, because that group was prepared and put together to provide an opportunity for the youth in our community. And I'm sorry I'm getting emotional, but this is, I'm on my way out. But I'm going to say it loud and proud right now. I'm not out. I'm a member of this community for 57 years. And my voice, while it might be sitting at this table, will be heard. And we're going to find a way to provide services for these kids so they can stop committing suicide. They're not bullied in school every single day. They have all the help that they need and the services provided in a safe space. That's what this was about. And I feel today is the first time I've sat in this meeting. I feel like the vision is lost. It's being lost over these things that I'm seeing on the screen right now. And I hope you guys rectify it. I certainly do. This is no jab at any one person, but this is exactly why we don't get stuff done. It's exactly why we don't get stuff done. Because we can't merge. We have a way of always getting our own way. And I'll say it again. One Bothell was the first entity that I've seen was able to bridge that gap and bring people together, because there was no hidden agendas, right? It was all about, this is what the vision was, save one thing, one piece of land. And we stayed true to that. The vision I had was to build a youth center for kids in our community, the North Shore area. That was my vision. And if that's not the vision anymore here, then that vision needs to be given to the Youth Center for Excellence and let them go run with it. because that is what that entity was set up for, is to build a youth center. Not a community center, but a youth center. Not saying the community can't use it because youth are part of our community. But I just want to make sure that I want to thank Nathan for your comments about the process of the needs assessment. That's a needs assessment. That's all this I think we're doing right now. We're not trying to build it, right? I had the fortunate opportunity to run into a very high profile athlete that wants to put his name behind this, the youth center. And if I were to bring him into this meeting right here and hear the conversation, it'd be like, you guys need to get your stuff together. This is a tough conversation for me to hear tonight. Because it's been 6.5 years getting it this far. I want to thank you, council member with your hat on, Dombrowski. You and I have had an opportunity to work together for a long time on this. A lot of you are new to the table and haven't had the opportunity to have gone to the other places that we've gone to and see the things that we've seen. But I'm like right now I'm beyond frustrated, all honesty, with this conversation. It's the first time I've ever said that publicly out loud at any meeting, and voiced my opinion on being frustrated. But this is the first time. I can't even begin to tell you how hurt I am at this conversation, because it feels like we're literally trying to divide two different entities that are trying to do wonderful things within the community. So with that said, I think that for me, the 501c3 status, I believe that they're on board for having that 501c3 status, not to receive funds for needs assessment, but more to raise funds for building the facility. The advertisement timeline and legal counsel, I think when it comes to legal counsel, I agree with Board Member Perry. Yes, let's make sure that we have the proper counsel in place. We're reviewing things that need to be reviewed so that we're doing things properly, because the last thing we don't want to do is have lack of transparency within the community. I think the community trusts us. Let's have that transparency when we go out. We let them know what we're trying to accomplish. The RFQ process, the needs assessment process, there were some questions around who do we use. I really haven't had my voice heard on that at this point, but I guess I would just tell you that to me, both firms that provided the information, the proposals, are qualified firms. I don't care which firm does it. What's the most important is we have the most information surrounding youth and the opportunities for youth, and not just locally, but nationally, because there's a lot of communities that are doing a lot of amazing things that are outside of our region. And if we don't listen to them or hear from them, then we're not really getting the information that we need to become better. And so I want to make sure that, I'm at least heard on that point, because I probably won't be here during the decision process. And then what does it look like for the NPRSA moving forward? Separate the funds, the needs assessment, but make sure at the end of the day, you work with the Youth Center for Excellence, because if you don't, it probably won't get built. They're the ones who are going to probably push us across the finish line, because as a government, our hands are tied. And I think we all know that if X amount of dollars comes in from the government, we have to have X amount of services that are provided under that facility. And that can limit in some cases, right? But I guess in closing, the vision was to create a facility where kids in our community come together, feel safe, can get academic help, sports training, high level, all across the board. And we are able to provide tournaments and other services to bring people within our community. And that was the ultimate vision. So whatever we do, whatever we decide as a board for this part of it, let's not lose sight of what Youth Center for Excellence is all about. Thank you.
James, I appreciate you sharing that. I don't have any idea where the idea that a community center was coming forward. I brought that up early on so I could understand, and Councilmember Dembowski said that, no, that's not what we're talking about. See, the only thing that I have understood from tonight's conversation is that it's about youth. So I'm very confused about the confusion. I'm not sure where the communication happened to convey something else. The idea that it is about youth means that we have to get it right, which I know you agree with. So I appreciate that you are thinking that having an attorney come on board is a good idea. I would suggest that the attorney is on board to actually assess the separation of NPRSA and the Youth Center for Excellence so that we understand very clearly what the lanes are, what the roles are, and what they're not. And it feels like if we're doing a needs assessment with NPRSA, the needs assessment would define the need for a 501c3 for fundraising. So I haven't been involved for 6 years. I don't know what that other Bothell relationship was. I have run nonprofits for 30 years. I understand fundraising very well. And so I'm trying to make sure that there is clarity in whatever I'm being asked to serve in this role for, that there's some clarity from where I'm sitting between the two entities now for youth, so that they get the maximum benefit because it's done really well and efficiently and effectively. So I'm trying to understand with a lawyer, an attorney coming in and understanding that separation to help guide us in that process. That would also allow the definition of who holds that, the funding for that needs assessment. And then it does feel, because I haven't been involved, it feels like the cart's before the horse. Like you're creating this whoever's creating this Youth Center for Excellence to guide it. And I agree, if somebody's not out there leading it, the energy dissipates and it doesn't happen. So you need the people that are very focused on it, leading that charge, in which case, why are we involved at all? Like, and would the needs assessment determine that a 501c3 is necessary and then help with that mission going forward? And, so to me, the needs assessment would come, and then it would be determined that a separate entity, that NPRSA would play this role, separate entity would provide that other role, and they'd create their own mission very separate from ours. And then the funding stream would be clear. So it is out of an abundance of support for youth and for that mission that we would go forward and make sure that everything is lined up. The protective factor of community engagement and sports is critical to offset the suicides and the death by suicide and death by overdose. And all of the different things that are happening that are ruining that potential future and our future through those youth, many of whom I've had the honor of knowing, and I understand the need there. And we'll join you in that fight. I want to make sure that the lines are clear. But no, I don't know who's talking about community center. So that part confused me. I also don't know what happened with whatever this Bothell thing was originally. I have no idea what that was. Thank you.
Thank you, board member. Board member Zorns.
Yeah, I'll try to keep things abbreviated, because I feel like Chair McNeil just took us to church to remind us why we're there. And I don't want to lose the moment. It was very well said and very well put, and helping us to make sure our focus is crystal clear. I understand the word of caution of getting legalized to look at this. Fully support that. Board member Dabowski saying that the check was written out to NPRSA. I have no qualms with NPRSA doing the feasibility test. I have no qualms with that. But getting legalized to come alongside and make sure that we're not crossing streams, great, perfect. I support that. I have a little bit of urgency of keeping this ball moving. So I hesitate to do anything to slow down. My only place that I'm pumping the brakes is for the NPRSA has shown that it works very well being property owner, working with another agency with our senior citizen center. That's what we do. So I have no problems with with our youth center. We're going to do just fine with that as well. We've got a lot of practice. But I do want to know from staff, what is it that you need from us to allow us to move into this next phase of getting this youth center? And where do we budget that money from? Where does that money come from? If you need an assistance, if we need to bring someone in part-time to help manage that, what is it you need from us to allow you to keep doing what you're doing with the other hats that you wear and move this piece forward on getting a feasibility study? That's the only place that I think that we need to have a discussion on. Everything else, yeah, let's get some legal to make sure our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed and we're very clear about what we can and cannot do. But let's get this ball moving. So, and thank you again, James, for your helping us to refocus and make our hearts beat together in getting this together for our kids.
Thank you, board member. Board member Fowle.
Thank you so much, Councilmember James McNeil. So what I heard tonight was not a pumping of the brakes. It was, wait a second, we do need legal eyes. So reconfirming that. We did hear Councilmember Dombowski say that they could probably provide some support a little bit from that King County side. We also heard a couple confirmations that there needs to be a separate budget line item named for this purpose. And it sounds like NPRSA is the oversight of that, and they are needing that clear communication. So I don't see any reason why we can't maybe make a motion tonight to create a budget line item for this, for the grant funds to land in and continue to move forward. Because what I do know is North Shore School District is getting ready to cut the rowing program for next year. They can't afford to operate or run it. And we have a lot of high school students who are going to have a lost sport. I also know that lacrosse is on the chopping block, and a dying breed in school is what kids can do before and after school now. And we all know that children, youth, and teens, when they don't have a place to go, they find other things to do. And they also find themselves on the slope of depression, suicidal ideation, isolation, and suicide. I don't want to see that for our community, youth and teens. I don't want to see that for our North End communities. We know there have been many needs assessments over the years from North Shore School District through our surrounding municipal cities. Those are all public record documents for the need for youth centers, for the need for aquatic centers, the need for fields. We need a place for our youth. I'm ready to move ahead with this by declaring a line item. I would hope for support and making a motion for a dedicated financial line item for the grant funds that would be coming from King County for this youth center with the oversight of the NPRSA. I don't want to see this fall further down the landslide. And we all know how grants come through. They come through, it takes a year or two before something happens to even being built. We have gaps in our community and great need, and the gaps are growing and the divide is growing. I want to see us moving forward, and it sounds like both Councilmember McNeil and I are in a kind of similar situation. So I am concerned about our community youth for the future generations to come, and what's to happen with our community youth once there isn't a place for them before and after school. And a youth center is needed. An activity center is needed, desperately so.
Thank you, Board Member Fell.
Board Member File, I just want to say, I know that you came into the meeting after it started, but the board did pass a resolution to open up a separate fund for that grant money. So that grant money, and that was approved by the board. So I think we cleared that up.
This actually leads us really well to our next slide. We really need direction from the board. We can do one of two things. We have, as was mentioned, some really strong proposals in hand from the, as a result of the RFQ process. And we have two options with them. We can either reject both proposals and get more answers from legal or whatever other thinking about this we need to do before we move forward in terms of really delineating whose responsibility is whose. Or based on the input that staff has received tonight about how this is squarely an NPRSA project, we are separating the funds out into their own accounts so that there's no mingling of the grant monies and the M&O levy that we have coming in right now. Staff could also move forward potentially with making an award to one of those two firms that provided submissions. And then that would be returned to this board in January for final execution. That is getting behind the date when we had originally advertised we were going to be making the award, which was one of the concerns that our legal has expressed. But that would, even though there's a delay there, moving forward and getting a contract executed in January is better than having to start over the entire RFQ process in terms of keeping the ball rolling. So we're really looking for direction from staff on which of those two options we want. If we want to reject all proposals, pause, think about this, get some real clear delineations and definitions in place before we then go out to RFQ again. Or if we're comfortable with the understanding we currently have of this is an NPRSA project, the Youth Center for Excellence exists sort of adjacent to the NPRSA, but does not have any sort of control over this other than, as has been mentioned, its role in an advisory capacity, the same as any other community partner, in which case we would potentially move forward with one of the two we have.
Any discussion? Board Member Dabowski? You're muted.
Thank you. Super helpful. Can I ask a question of staff? I think that the amount that we put in the contract here was it 350,000?
Yeah, that's the total grant.
Okay. In the RFQ, did you do an estimated contract amount?
We did not.
Okay. Okay.
That's to be negotiated after award.
Okay. Let me make a motion here, which just to get a dialogue going and see if we can advance the ball. I move that the NPRSA select proposer blank, and I want to have a discussion about the two proposers to advance the feasibility and assessment study for the youth center. That in the number one, and so we will need an amendment to fill in the blank, and I just want to hear from the committee about the two proposers and then have a decision there. Second part of the motion, that legal be consulted in the development of the contract to ensure that NPRSA retains sole authority and with respect to the project unless and until a further and different relationship is developed and voted upon by the board with the Youth Center for Excellence or any other entity. And number three, that all of these dollars be run through the account that we designated tonight. And number four, that up to $50,000, if eligible, of the $350,000 grant be held back to secure staff support to administer this work for the NPRSA. That can be through Bothell staff or an independent consultant, but to bring on some capacity and keep this separate from your work for the senior center side. So it's a 4-part motion. Advance the work by choosing a contractor, ensure that legal reviews the contract ultimately put into place with the proposer to make sure we have these separate lines of authority that Councilmember Perry has raised. Number 3, that all funds be operated through the separate account established tonight by board action. I forgot number 4. Number 4, that we hold up to $50,000 of the $350 back, if eligible under the county grant terms, to provide staff support for this work. That's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion, 4-part motion on the floor with a second in discussion.
To lead it off, and I want Councilmember Perry to jump in, but I was kind of hoping there were 2, I skimmed through them, really beautiful proposals. Nathan and others led some work and have, they chose one, they ranked them. And if the board is interested in moving forward here as proposed tonight, I'd kind of be curious to get a little summary of the 2 and why they recommended one over the other, so then we could insert the name as a board. That's it. Sorry, Councilmember Perry. Now I'll stop talking.
No, it's good. And in fact, I would appreciate having that summary if we could as part of this, because it's helpful to understand what the thinking is with the 350,000, what the line items are, and what holding back that 50,000 would do to what the 350,000 was intended for. And again, this is for a needs assessment.
Yes.
Yes.
A needs assessment specifically for the youth in the community
Yes.
to determine whether a center would be necessary or viable.
Yes, along with if there are other needs that a youth community center or even a community, like just needs in general of a community center, but we are focused on the youth in this particular scenario.
I see. So because there's these other things, that's what brought up the rub. So, okay, and we don't have.
I'm sorry, Board Member Perry. When you say rub, what does that mean?
What affected you and you said was very emotional for you, that we were getting off course about youth, and I had not heard anything but youth. So I didn't understand what your emotion was connected to when you were saying that, because I hadn't been part of a conversation that was leading to that. I was only hearing youth, but now I'm hearing that the need assessment would assess what the community needs are in a full earnest way of what's the larger need. And with that in mind, a decision would be made regardless of what our interests might be. The need assessment would determine the need in the community. So it's a broader needs assessment focusing on youth, but also on community writ large. Is that right?
That's the way the RFP is written, yes.
Okay. And James, do you have a problem with how that RFP is written? Are you wanting to know just youth? Is that what the concern was?
Well, the focus, if we all know when we do a needs assessment, when we focus on community needs looks much different than youth needs.
Indeed.
Right? So we want to make, well, in my opinion, we want to make sure that the language is focused, whichever group is working on this project is focused on the youth needs within the community, not the community's needs at large, unless we're trying to build a community center at large, right? So that is my perception of it, is when we put a needs assessment out, the language will determine the information that we get back. So if you ask a community member, well, do you want a pool? Well, each member of our community is going to look at it differently. If you ask our community, what needs do you have for youth? What type of programming do you have for youth? Will look different than what type of programming do you have for seniors or middle-aged, right?
But can you help me understand why the RFP was including community to begin with? Because it doesn't necessarily follow that it would be a community center, does it? Or is the structure what this was ultimately planning to get to? A youth center, brick and mortar, or a community center, brick and mortar, or both or neither or whatever? It is the ultimate goal that this moves toward a brick and mortar building for either community or, okay, thank you, Rod. Thank you very much. That clarifies. And then originally, when you were putting this RFP out there, is there a need to really understand in earnest what people are feeling in the community? Because if you do create the language just for youth and you're leaving all the other interests off the table, so we can't make a fair assessment of what the honest response is for that full spectrum from the community, do we have a responsibility ethically to ask that full question of the full community, to get all those questions out there for youth and community so that we can hear a clear assessment come back? And if it says clearly this is a focus for youth or community or both, that we would make decisions based on what the full community response is rather than narrowly determining and focusing it on that one area, making that decision for the community rather than getting that needs assessment fed back to us honestly from the full community. Is there a reason that we are narrowing it to youth? In which case, if that's a decision that's already been made before I came on board, why are we including community at all? And if we are including community, because parents are also part of youth conversation, if we are including community, then why aren't we making that as broad as possible, including all those questions, youth, parents, whatever it is, so that we can hear back that honest assessment. So I'm asking so I can understand the basis for the intention of the language with the RFP.
So if I could speak a little bit to that, Councilmember Perry, you've kind of touched on some of the reasons why I chose one consultant over the other. And the reason why is because, in my opinion, that consultant showed that they had more depth and breadth and experience with really broad, inclusive, and genuine community engagement. In my perspective, and the subs that they would contract with are also very credible in the community engagement industry in this area. So my personal opinion as a staffer was that we all want the same thing. And I would like for the needs assessment and the community engagement process to really hold up to scrutiny from everyone, to all stakeholders. I feel like a more broad community engagement effort might yield information in the needs assessment that's more valuable and better informs what we do moving forward. I think that is scary because we need to be really open-minded about what that community engagement might reveal and might come back. But I also understand what board chair McNeil is saying, is that if we focus in on youth, then maybe we'll get a little bit more, we'll dig more into the details and we'll really be doing more engagement directly with the youth. But I think in my perspective, I want a needs assessment that brings back data that's broad enough, and then it helps all of us make really great decisions, whatever they may be. I don't know if that's helpful.
Do you see a world in which that broad, I do like the pure data coming back so that it can stand up to scrutiny, and it doesn't say, well, you were just doing this one thing and you didn't really check everybody out. And really, if you had checked everybody out, it would have gone in this other direction. We don't want to hear that. We want to make sure that the full scope maybe we all want, what I would say that I would like if engaging in that is that a full scope would be assessed. And I wouldn't be surprised if youth comes through strongly and maybe something else comes through strongly. So at that point, would we be able to get the consultants to do a phase 2? So there's like a phase 1, which is that broad-based. And then there's a phase 2, which is to go into maybe the 2 or 3 most significant areas and do a deeper dive as part of that assessment, and then bring those forward, and we could make a choice about all those. And that would still stand up to scrutiny, but would allow for that youth focus. Because I'm aware, at least in my district, which is East Lake, Snohomish, the Pass, and I-90 to Highway 2 covers Woodinville, a little tiny bit of Bothell, but all of Woodinville city and unincorporated. We have the highest number of individuals ages 17 and under of all of King County districts. So there's a lot. 26% of my district is youth, and I am very focused on youth, and I would love to see more things for our youth. But I want to come by that from a clear assessment that can stand up to scrutiny, and then go deeper into it with a phase 2 from the consultant that goes into, 2 or 3 different areas that show up significantly, bring those back. And then we could say, yeah, we need this, this, and this. We don't want to merge them. What's the priority? Which one do we start with? Right? Like that. That feels more, if we're going to do that, why would we only focus on the one would be my question. Why wouldn't we broaden that?
I think we would absolutely phase the scope of work and the milestones as you've described, and we could also phase the community engagement just as you've described. I think that's perfect. And I think we had discussions, and I'll say this, I think it is helpful if we refer to this as the Youth Community Center, and I think a slight decoupling of the Youth Center for Excellence and thinking about that nonprofit and that entity, I think a slight decoupling of that from this needs assessment would in the end help us be more successful overall. And I don't really know how to describe why I think that, but I just think it makes sense to hear that we are very open-minded going into this needs assessment process. And if we're talking a lot about the Youth Center for Excellence, there are going to be critics who are going to say, oh, that's the direction you knew you wanted to go in.
You're manipulating it. Yeah.
We knew what you already had designed. We've already seen the brochure that, the initial architects did. And I think it's kind of just an administrative thing. It's kind of a marketing philosophical thing that if we do it, but we still inform the scope of work with the Youth Center for Excellence vision and ideas. And we have already drafted a scope of work that Randy and a few others have helped us craft. So it's just kind of I don't know.
Well, has anybody in this crafting or engagement or scope of work are any of them involved in professional capital campaign fundraisers that would understand all of the different entities of private and public funding? And
I am. I've done lots of capital fundraising. I built a few YMCAs. I built a YMCA. So yeah, I come to this project with that perspective squarely in mind.
All right, I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. And when we do this consultant work in these other ways, would you maintain yourself as in the role that you are here and entertain having a consultant that is impartial or is outside of this come in with their scope and give a something, give a bid for this so that we could see what they'd offer as well? Because you're deeply focused and ingrained, as we know, those of us that do that stuff.
I'm sorry, I don't think I understood the question. So
if the point of the entity is to engage in fundraising, to be able to broaden the scope, to provide as many different, engage as many different stakeholders in fundraising, private public partnership, Amazon, public funding, individuals giving, the whole thing, right? That it wouldn't come from your hand as that advice. You bring in a capital campaign consultant to determine that for this 501c3.
Yeah, I mean, this is very much like we used to call this for me, in my mind, this is the pre-feasibility stage.
Okay.
Where on the one hand, we're doing a feasibility study from the public perspective to kind of do the needs assessment. The Youth Center for Excellent work, they're just getting started on thinking through who would funders possibly be, and how do you start to have those identification kind of discussions. So it's very pre-qualification. We're not anywhere close to asking for dollars for a project that isn't even scoped yet. And so it's very much just that early interest identification phase on their side. So there's no active fundraising going on for any bricks and mortar yet at all.
But in the draft scope of work, what we expected for the consultant, there's an item about they need expertise, or they need experts to present potential funding structures or funding models moving forward.
Yeah.
And I will also say that one of the consultants touched on that, and the expertise that they discussed gave me some confidence that they had a little bit of background on how to develop like a potential funding structure, funding
Yeah.
model that might work.
And I would strongly, this is again where the lanes get separate and where we don't direct the 501c3, right? That's their entity, and that lawyer will make that very clear on what does what. But having a professional fundraiser who's not on staff or board for this organization, it's like an amazing thing to have somebody on staff or board that knows has fundraising chops, like Nathan, like me. I'm also considered an expert in that particular field. You know, that's great because we can question them, but we shouldn't be the ones doing that. And so if you had somebody come in and talk about what does the quiet phase mean? What does that next phase mean? And like that, then that would be an opportunity to have, again, those doors wide open to really understand, you know, what the possibilities are. Because I don't think anybody here has the space on their plate to take that on. And I hear what you're saying, that it's early days. I get that. I just wanted to, coming into this and hearing, I wanted to know that there was something in there that looked at professional fundraising.
I'd add that this project, we have a very expansive scope of work in the RFQ that went out. It has a lot of steps. There are a lot of deliverables. And I think that the scope of work that is associated with this RFQ will end up addressing a lot of the concerns that are being raised here.
Mr. Chair, this is Dembowski.
Chair McNeil left the room.
Okay. I can understand why. I want to make sure my motion is clear, and if I need to amend it to say that the focus of this needs to be youth. The focus of the needs assessment and the feasibility and the recommendation needs to be primarily on youth. In building the facility, there could be collateral benefits and associated users, but we have toured Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs. We ran an amendment for capital investments in the Best Starts for Kids program with this project in mind to bring capital dollars for young people. I want to share with the group, I'm a little concerned that I'm not supportive of kind of a broad going out to the community and say, hey, what do we need for general capital facilities? Like this is a project for young people, is always envisioned for young people. The budget grants from the county were aimed at young people and building that vision. And so I'm a little concerned about this discussion we've just had here. I get that when you build a Boys and Girls Club, sometimes you'll have an adult rec league come in, or whatever, or you might have an AA group come in and use the space, right? There can be adult uses, co-uses, but the primary vision here is for youth. And I want to be true to that because there's been a lot of work over many years to get to the dollars to be able to do the work.
Does something exist right now, Rod, that says in an RFP, youth and community?
Yes, it does say Youth Community Center, and that's the name of the RFP. And we do have like a broad scope of work, but just know that in the next phase, once we move forward with an award, the board, we will craft a contract that has specific deliverables that the board will be able to, we'll put that in a contract and the board approves that contract. So we can definitely make sure that the language that you all are looking for is in that contract.
To that point, the term youth community center was coined as a way of, as we've been sort of discussing, not pigeonholing this project into a specific youth need, not a specific community need, but a specific youth need. So this is a potentially very broad, multifaceted center for youth, as opposed to restricting it to this is solely a specific athletic field or solely a specific performing arts facility. This is, broadly speaking, a facility that may offer any number of programs and may have any number of components and amenities, as will be determined by the study. However,
Is that Barbara?
Yes, that's me.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
hard. We can't see you're online. You said that super well. That's
Sorry.
Yes, what you're saying.
So the RFP does, I think, specify the intention is that this facility, regardless of what exactly it ends up looking like in terms of the building or what programs are being offered there, it's intended for youth. And I also think not only is that in the RFP, and as Christine mentioned, not only can we really nail that down in the contract, both firms that submitted proposals really seem to understand that.
So you're looking at community as augmenting the youth and having it be as broad and open as possible by saying community and not just youth. The intention is to look at what the community needs, fashion it for the youth, but with that broader based understanding of community.
Yes.
I'm with
Yes.
that. I'm good
Yes.
on that. Yep.
Yeah, that's super. That's been helpful because you called the RFP our youth community center. So you're saying, hey, they might do music, they might do athletics, they might do counseling,
Exactly.
homework support, all of those things.
Yeah.
It's not a youth sports center. It's not a youth academic achievement center. It's the use of the word community was to really say, hey, it's multi-purpose. That's helpful. I took me a while to get there too. Okay.
So I think that what we need to do is discuss the two proposals and I guess get some kind of feedback on a word, right?
Yeah.
Can I do a point of order?
Yeah.
I think Vice Chair Dembowski now is chairing, and I think
Yes.
there's a motion on the table. Is that correct?
Yes, the motion on the table is for us to make an award to one of the two firms, which we will select at this time.
Yeah, that's what Christine was getting.
Yeah, which is what Christine's getting at. And then also, the motion on the table includes a stipulation that we work with our legal, which I believe that one of you has mentioned this. Our legal is Madrona right now we are working with. We're not actually working with a City of Bothell employee. Madrona happens to be the same firm which the city contracts with, but we're not actually working with the city lawyer at this point is in terms of our legal counsel. So there's not a conflict of interest there the way that there may have been in the past. So to set your mind at ease at that. Those are the first 2 points. The fourth point was that we would reserve some of the funding in an amount of $50,000 or up to $50,000 if possible to look at an additional consultant to help me and Christine and Becky with actually carrying out the staff component of this feasibility study, because there are going to be meetings with the firm we select, and there's going to be back and forth with them, and there's going to be some work from NPRSA staff in terms of that. It's not going to be something we can entirely put onto the contractor. I'm sorry, I don't remember offhandedly what the third point was.
Money goes through the new account.
Yeah, money goes through the new account.
Money goes through the new account.
That was kind of belt and suspenders for
Set up,
Councilmember
so.
File.
We're already
Well,
done.
thank you so much for that recap, and I think it accurately reflects the motion. Could you, Nathan, since you served on the committee, would you be willing to give us, and I know we all got the materials from the two proposers, would you just give us an overview, high level of the two and the recommendation from the staff team?
Both proposals were very strong. One's from Arnold Mantis Group, and the other is from ARC. The group that reviewed them both thought they both had really good points to them. The Arnold Mantis Group has worked with the Youth Center for Excellence group before, and a lot of them are familiar with what they proposed. They came forward with some of the subs that they've been working with for a while now, and it's a really strong group of people, several with good national profiles. The ARC proposal also came through really strong, a really good focus to it. I like the subs that they brought together too. It's a slightly different mix. Let's see, how do I, those of us who listened to both proposals, most of us gave a slight edge to the ARC proposal, but few of us preferred the Arno Matis proposal quite strongly, so it was not unanimous. So
It's accurate.
Can anyone speak to why they preferred one over the other?
I can speak for myself. The one thing that gave the ARC proposal the edge for me was they brought a sub to the table with a great track record of doing youth engagement locally.
Do you
It's
have
Chris-
any sense that they might have a bias because they've already worked with the organization?
They're not the one that worked with.
No, that's the
They're
other.
not the one that.
Yeah, I selected the other one.
Okay. All right.
This is
Why the-
Christine. Oh, so I chose ARC over Arno Matis, just because in the interview, unprompted, they talked about targeting youth right up front. And they also have done a lot of public-private partnerships in our region. So I thought that they came very strongly from that perspective.
I also selected ARC for the same reasons as both Nathan and Christine. And I also was particularly impressed with the way ARC talked about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in your community engagement. And the way they talked about that and some of the examples they gave, it really aligned with how I think DEI principles should be incorporated into community engagement.
And I also selected ARC. And to your point, Councilmember Perry, since everyone else mentioned the nice talking points, I agree. I think there's potentially room for a bid protest. Actually, if it were to appear that there was this sort of conflation of the two entities and conflict of interest there. So on top of the sort of more like great, nice, substantive reasons why we all agreed that ARC brought a stronger proposal in terms of their ability to engage with youth locally and their history, their portfolio of local work that really showed a wide variety of projects and different audiences, different facilities, different services at those facilities. I just thought it would be cleaner, actually, to go with that firm.
And when they just go ahead, yeah.
If I may, since there aren't, since none of the other folks are in the room, I'd also just like to speak. They were very close to me. One of the things that the Arno Matis proposal had is that they really brought a group together that does a good job building statement pieces and really prominent community and facilities. So they really brought a team that kind of has a transformational vision for spaces.
And which one is this, Nathan? Which one is this?
That's Arno Matis, the one I
Okay.
didn't select, but that's one of the reasons that I think that that the other folks that both James and Randy kind of selected them. One of the other points that Randy kind of that's valid is that both teams have a pretty good community engagement components within them, and with direction, Arno Matis's team probably would do the youth engagement if just as well. So I just want to make sure that those other points are reflected in the discussion.
It's helpful. And did either of them, when they were doing the DEI, did either of them talk about the LGBTQIA youth and any approach they might take there?
I don't recall.
Maybe I'm directly addressed.
Yeah.
Believe me, if there would have been a point about trans athletes, I would
Check it in, Barbara.
So,
Check it in.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. I
Absolutely would have written that down. But no, that was not directly addressed by either group.
think that's an important piece for people to address. Yeah.
All right, we've had a good presentation and summary here. The materials for the two proposers are in our materials. Does any member have another question for our staff team? Councilmember Zorn, File. And I apologize, I'm working right here, so I can't tell who all's in the room.
I have a quick
Councilmember
comment.
Zorn. Super.
Just a
Councilmember
quick, just a quick comment. just hearing everybody talk about their reasons why they supported ARC. I don't know, it's about 3/4 of the way through and I went, sold, I'm sold on it. But I do want to thank Nathan for presenting the other group and the reasons what would be given on why they were also a contender. And they sound like it was it sounds like it was a tough conversation you all had as you were sifting and sorting through who to choose. So thank you for giving us the other point of view as well, Nathan.
Super. Council member, would any member like to make an amendment to the motion to insert one of the proposers?
I'm willing to make an amendment to the motion on the table to add.
Okay, and who is that? I can't see. Sorry.
Sorry, this is board member
Sorry.
Who? Board member what?
Art.
Oh, Arts.
Aren't.
Okay.
Yes.
It's not fair. You got to look at my big ugly face and I can only see little dots.
Here.
I'm not even on the screen, so.
But I would make an amendment to the motion on the table to add ARC into the blank in the first part of the 4-part motion.
All right,
Second.
that amendment is heard. It's been seconded by Councilmember Zorns. We'll do a voice vote on this. All in favor of the amendment to insert ARC as the proposer that we are asking the staff to give a notice of award to and try to proceed to contract, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? That amendment carries. Would it be appropriate to add language in my own motion here to say, in the event that we are unable to reach a reasonable contract terms with ARC, that the staff is authorized, given the closeness of the, competition here, is authorized to enter into a contract with the second proposer, whose name I'm forgetting.
Very
I just want-
appropriate. I that's a good idea.
I also just want to be clear that some of the reasons that were brought forward are still reasons at play, which is the conflict of interest potentially. So I just want to make sure that people are, what people think of that for that automatic decision versus if it didn't work out, that we would come back and discuss that again.
Yeah. I'll just say I feel a little bad because I think I don't know all the details on perhaps why that's there, but I think that they came down on a voluntary basis to present some ideas on a Saturday retreat at the senior center to the community stakeholders. And so they maybe had some, that I think that's the extent of the relationship, if you will. So I understand we'd have to be, I would, I guess, include the conflict of interest analysis in our legal assessment, bullet point 3, to avoid that. But assuming that were not an issue, to have them as a fallback, I think would be helpful.
I'm not a lawyer, but I think the extent of my concern about a conflict of interest comes from the other bidder.
Yeah, that's what.
So if we were to award to them, I would have expected to receive a bid protest from the other bidder had they learned about there being an existing relationship, even of that very small passing level, without the other bidder in play, because at this point, we would have been unable to reach an agreement with them and enter into a contract. So that's no longer an issue. Then I don't anticipate that being viewed as a significant conflict of interest by anyone else. I only
Even
mention
if
that
it's-
because I don't want to deal with bid protests.
And Barbara, even if it's written into the contract versus if we can't come to an agreement with the one, we come back and just have a conversation. Like if their name is written into the contract, is that, I don't know, it just feels weird to have. I think Rod, what you're trying to do is give authority to the board rather to the staff to move on it rather than having to come back as a.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I appreciate raising the issue, but the Arno Mattis, I mean, they didn't meet with NPRSA. They showed up at the senior center on a weekend for a community chat. I mean, I don't believe any of us are influenced by that. Most of these folks on making the decisions here weren't there. So, okay, I think the motion is before us as amended. It sounds, and I'm going to just treat my the fallback of contractor as a friendly amendment to my own motion. And I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much. It's been a very robust discussion. I want to appreciate the members to the board. We kind of had an evolving membership on this board over the years. This has been an ongoing project and has had fits and starts. And I thought we had a really good dialogue to kind of help level set here and to bring in fresh perspectives, honestly. Just because it was the way we thought 6 years ago and 4 years ago and 2 years ago doesn't mean it's what's needed today. And I thought tonight's discussion was super helpful. Staff, is there anything further that we need to take action on tonight?
Nope,
No, we have quick reports, but
we can.
we can defer those until next time.
Yeah. I just want to,
Nathan, we always get an update on the senior center. I don't think we had it tonight. Give us a very high level on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being awesome and 1 being we got major problems. How we doing?
We are a solid 7.7.
Yay. Okay. Do you believe, staff and Nathan, that we will be okay? Christine, okay. Do you want to give us a capital repairs update? Let's do that. That seems super important since that's job 1.
senior center building, HVAC and roof, we're 100% complete. We came $43,000 under budget on that project. And we're still closing out the health and wellness center, HVAC and roof. So we're about 95% complete. We're hoping to close that out by the end of this week. If not, then after Thanksgiving. And right now we're still sitting about $20,000 under budget. So we're looking good, budget wise. We're a little, behind on the timeline for the health and wellness center. There's a few hiccups, but we're getting past them and we're not having to spend anything over what we budgeted. So I think we're doing good.
Well, I just want to thank you for all of this work. It's the fulfillment of the vision from several years ago when we asked the voters to make this investment. And it's super important. I know we've had some surprises along the way as you get in these kind of projects, and I just think you've handled them well, and it's really built confidence in what we're doing. So thank you so much. And future meetings. Do you believe, let me ask the main question. Are we good to not meet until January 17, 2024? Do you believe we can get between to there without the necessity for a meeting?
Definitely 100. But we will be, just know, Board Member Dombrowski, that we will be leaning on you starting January 1st. As what is the proper term for it, Barbara? Interim.
In acting board chair.
Acting board chair
Until maybe on the 17th, we can.
for the election.
Yeah, we'll have some new faces, and they may not yet be appointed, right? Because of council.
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for staying late and participating in this meeting. It's important. I think we made some great progress tonight. And I really have enjoyed the discussion and the care that people have brought to it. I want to especially thank our staff at Bothell, who have done a tremendous amount of work in our primary project, the senior center, and also in this secondary undertaking, and all the work you've done to do that RFQ and select the contractor and present it in such a very clear way. If members can be helpful to you in this work in the meantime, I know that we're available and you can reach out. In the event that it's necessary for some unforeseen reason and we need to schedule a kind of a special meeting, let us know. I'll be happy to facilitate that if James is not able to. And seeing no further business to come before us tonight, and seeing that it's 8:37, I'm going to adjourn this meeting.
Okay, everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Let's do that.